Well, Jeff, what was it about Jonathan Simmons that impresses you?
A lot of things about Jonathan Simmons impress us. I think that the first element when you look at a player and trying to add someone to an organization is you want fighters. You want guys who are going to compete to win and make those around them better. And we see a lot of that in Jonathan.
How quickly was he on your radar, on the team's radar to begin with? And did you think that the Magic would have a chance at acquiring him, considering that he began free agency as a restricted free agent?
That obviously changed the equation. When the status of a player goes from restricted to unrestricted, it changes the nature of the conversation. You never know how free agency is going to play out. You just don't know how these things happen. Jonathan was a player that we've admired and that we had discussed internally, but you just never know as things unfold and guys get, taken off the board and teams fill up and room gets filled up, how development will play out. But we were happy to have Jonathan here.
I think that's you mentioned fighter. I'm guessing because of his story and where he came from, undrafted, all of that. Did you know all of that going in, or in his conversations, do you start to realize how much he had to put in to get here?
Yeah, I think Jonathan's story is well known throughout the league, and I think it's one of the coolest stories I've ever heard. That he would pay his own way to a D-League tryout and end up where he is today, I think just says everything you need to know about Jonathan Simmons. And when you talk about a fighter, then you just watch him play. And that's all you need to do. And you have enough guys like that, you'll be okay.
Both Simmons and Mack have been known throughout the league to be really good defenders. How will that reputation kind of help them here in Orlando? I think coaches would make the case that a lot of defense is just how hard you play, how badly you want it. And once again, I'll bring the word how much you want to fight. And I do think that will help change the complexion of the team, and I think that's an important part for us. Was defensive focus at the forefront of free agency, would you say?
Well, there are a lot of issues that we were hoping to address, and that we still hope to improve upon, but you can't really designate a certain skill set and then attack it that way. I think things have to line up for you. It involves the discussions that the players are having with other teams. It's such a sliding scale, and free agency is never a freeze frame picture. It's a video, and it's always changing. So the fact that we could add a guy like a Jonathan Simmons who would help us with so many of those things, but as you alluded to, the defensive element was really, we feel very fortunate.
And both Mack and Simmons have plenty of playoff experience. Do you think that's also a major benefit for a young team like here?
No question. I think anytime that you can add young veteran players who still have ambition to grow and improve, but they have the experience of having played in the postseason and what that means and what it takes to get there is a huge element for any team.
Well, what did you like about Shelvin and the need that he would fill on this team?
Shelvin is an overachiever, and everywhere Shelvin's been, he seems to surprise people how good of a player he is, how good of a teammate he is, and he enters into situations and turns them into Shelvin Mack opportunities. And I think that those people that continually do that are unique, and they help teams win.
In addition to bringing in these two dynamic players, what other changes have you begun to implement to make Orlando Magic the best team in the league?
It's a great question. I mean, we're obviously, free agency doesn't wait for you. So we've been attacking that right after the draft into free agency. There are a lot of elements of the organization that we want to address, get our arms around, and we're still considering and evaluating a lot of that. And quite honestly, that's not going to happen overnight. But I think that the first reflection is how we present ourselves on the court, how we fight, how we play together. So excited to be here today to be able to talk about these guys with you.
Jeff, Jonathan's story gets a lot of the publicity, and maybe what he was asked to do in San Antonio took a little bit away from what he could do offensively. We saw that in the playoffs. Can you talk to his offensive game and what he can be for you guys on that end of the floor?
Yeah, I think that Jonathan's such a good defender. He's such an aggressive player that that kind of captures your attention. But Jonathan gets to the rim. He's a capable passer, and I think his shooting has shown improvement. So at this stage of his career, he's still a young guy. If he can kind of continue to stair-step progress with his perimeter abilities, there's a whole nother level in store for him.
So if you're kind of through the first wave of working through this roster a little bit between the draft and now with free agency, what's kind of your overall sense of what you've been able to accomplish here with the roster early going?
I don't really consider it that way. I know that we always are continually evaluating how we can get better and where opportunities may present themselves. I think we tried to be consistent with the message that we thought patience could be a virtue in this free agent market, and we feel fortunate to come away with the players that we have thus far. But we'll continue to look for opportunities and figure out how we can get better.
What are the areas you want to address still in free agency from now until the opening of camp?
The roster is nearing. I don't want to say completion because it's never complete, but we're filling up the roster spots. I know that an element that every team would like to add is shooting, and so you can never have enough shooting in the NBA. We'll continue to seek out ways to add that as we kind of round things out, but you can't pinpoint those things, and conversations are ongoing with us and with other teams as well. So we'll just keep our fingers crossed and work towards that end.
How do you feel about the way your team is setting up in terms of the cap, not for the rest of this summer, but for the summer of 2018, especially considering that you've got two players who are about to, at least are on schedule, to become restricted free agents with Aaron and Alfred?
We've tried to add talent, add the right kind of people, and manage our flexibility. I think that's an important part of developing the future for the organization. And I don't think we've committed to anything excessive or long range where we'll have to pay the price on the back end. Those deals aren't always easy to find, but we've tried to work that way. At the same time, while we're improving the team and letting our young guys grow up in a culture of togetherness and competitiveness and hopefully winning.
At what stage did you start to engage with Jonathan and his agent?
The way that stuff works is you kind of touch base with everyone, and you work like in spirals, and you continually kind of do your laps and see where things are, and then you start to hone in more on what players are still on the board, what discussions other players may have been having with other teams, and you circle back and you start to sometimes okay, well this one could be maybe developing further down the line for us. And I would characterize our discussions with Jonathan in that light.
Chad Forcier coached him for 1 year with the Spurs. Did Chad's input about Jonathan play a role in Magic's interest?
Well, we do as much intel on everyone that we add, whether it be draft, free agency, trade, as we can possibly do. But obviously having a coach on staff who's coached the player is always a bonus, because you're going to get the unfiltered truth, and Chad spoke very highly of Jonathan.
When you look at some of the guys that you guys have been able to acquire, positional versatility and an ability to affect the game on defense seems to maybe be a common thread. Is that a reflection of kind of the organizational approach to those sorts of talents, or is it just those were the best players available and it kind of worked out that way?
I think that oftentimes the guys that can do those things are the best players available, because those are coveted skills in today's NBA. Multi-position defenders who bring it every day are highly valued by teams, and so I don't know if you put the chicken in front of the egg or the cart in front of the horse, but yeah, if you can get guys like that, the more the better.
Does Orlando Magic have any scheduled events to, showcase and welcome these two new players into the team and the team environment to the community?
That's a good question. I'm probably not the best person to answer that, to be honest with you.
I need to ask.
Yeah, I'll get somebody in touch with you. But I will say this, these guys, this is the tricky part about being in the NBA. And, Jonathan has to relocate his family. Shelvin has to relocate his family. I mean, they're on the ground right now. They'll probably want to look at places and get resituated and integrated into the team. It's also, our players are dispersed right now and they're all working on their own. Our coaches are going around touching them. So, summer times are a time of work, but also of recharging your batteries in the NBA. So, we want to bring these guys in at the right pace. We want to get our arms around them and let them know that we support them, that we have everything that they'll need to get them established, to get their families comfortable, and then at the right time we'll start to integrate more, basketball and more team and figure out how we all come together.
Thank you.
Good.
All good?